Welcome to Chapter and Verse. I'm Rick Bleiweiss. I am an author and the author of Piñón, Scorpion, and the Barbershop Detectives, a historical fiction mystery which publishes in February. And I'm here today for what I believe everybody is going to find to be a fascinating conversation. I'm here with Nicole Resciniti, who is the owner of the Seymour Literary Agency and the agency's president, Julie Gwinn. And welcome. For full transparency, Nicole and Julie are my agents as an author, and I love them to death. So I hope you love them as much as I do. Hi. So tell me about Seymour Agency for people who don't know about it, how to get started, what makes it different. Just tell everybody about your agency because it's one of the best in the industry.
Rick, thank you. Thank you. And hooray that we get to be here on Chapters and Verse and that we get to talk to you and talk about great books, because I don't think there's anything that makes us happier. The Seymour Agency was founded 25 years ago by Mary Sue Seymour, and she regrettably passed away a few years ago, but she was one of the most influential people in my life and in publishing to a large degree. She launched hundreds and hundreds of authors into successful publishing careers. So we feel honored and incredibly blessed to be able to carry on her mission and this lineage of helping to elevate authors and achieve publication for them. As an agency, we have offices spread out. We will be actually, newsflash, announcing an office in France. So that's incredibly exciting. We're based New York, Nashville, and Naples, Florida, with our agents also spread throughout the country. We represent a broad range of fiction and nonfiction, pretty much everything. And I'd recommend that if there's some particular genre or agent that you're looking for who handles a certain style of book, that you would refer to our website. What did I leave out, Julie?
No, I think that's good. That's a great start. I'll tell you just a little anecdote. When I was a fiction publisher, the first time I met Mary Sue, of course, this was before social media. I'm dating myself here, before Zoom. And I was on a panel and she walked up to me in this flame red dress and her blonde hair and this hat and said, "I'm Mary Sue Seymour." And I said, "No, you're not." She said, "Yes, I am." She was, in my mind, the epitome of a Southern belle. She just had the look, the grace, the demeanor, but she did not look like any other agent that I had ever met. So that was the first time I had met her in person, and it has stayed with me.
We got a soft spot for hats, Rick.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm glad of that.
Love it.
So how did each of you get into being an agent? What were your paths?
Oh, convoluted. Let's see. I grew up in a motorcycle dealership, third generation. So that made for an interesting upbringing. My career path was, I was accepted into dental school. So I was on a track to be a dentist. I ended up majoring with degrees in psychology, behavioral neuroscience, minors in chemistry. I taught marine science. I taught high school, juniors, seniors, bartended for a number of years as I was achieving the education and teaching. There's probably a similar thread between the drunks and the teenagers and how you have to reason to people. Maybe there's even a correlation with authors, some creativity wrangling that I like to embrace, or I like a little bit of excitement in my day, I guess. But completely roundabout. I was interning for Mary Sue, and she had actually gotten me a deal as an author for a children's book series. And then in the course of us waiting for the contract, that publisher actually closed their fiction line for kids. And she's like, "Are you devastated? Are you gutted?" And I was like, "Well, I didn't tell my mom. I didn't pop the champagne. I guess I was just, waiting in this limbo." And then she's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I was still teaching. That, like, the next week I got laid off of that job. So,
Wow.
so it was like, boom, 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 boom. But she said, well, why don't you come and be an agent? And I was like, well, why don't I don't really have much else to do at this point. And as ironic as it sounds, that was the start of everything. And I never looked back. I made a ton of deals pretty quickly out of the gate. Those authors are still with me, over a decade later. We kind of got to grow up together, which continues to be, just the best feeling in the whole world. And so not a formal background at all, just an absolute love of stories, of storytelling. And then again, that whole Mary Sue factor of kind of making people's dreams come true. And when you get to do it for multiple people, it's actually more rewarding than just doing it for yourself. So it's been good.
Cool. Julie?
Yeah, I would say that agenting is probably the compilation of everything I've done, kind of like Nicole. I'm sure your psychology comes into play. I don't know about the marine science, but a journalism major. And I remember my dad telling me that he was disappointed because you never make any money as a writer. So I was a newspaper reporter for a while. I really wanted to write for National Geographic. I have a history minor and love archaeology and all of that kind of stuff. And you probably see that in a lot of the books that I acquire, because that blurring the line between truth and fiction, pulling an artifact that is a portal kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff. But did a stint about 20 years in marketing, advertising, nonprofit management, and then went back to work full time after my kids were kind of middle school age at Lifeway Christian Resources as a trade book marketing manager, and launched a fiction line there with an editor. She was in Portland, I think. And, you got to work the sales guys. You got to work, you got to be able to walk up to them in the office and say, what's the lay down, for Barnes and Noble. So I ended up being promoted to fiction publisher. And I really feel like it's really a combination of all my writing, all my marketing, all my kind of sales stuff. And then they stopped doing fiction. And I remember my conversation with Nicole because she said, why don't you come be an agent? And I said, I can't sell. I can't sell. And she said, I have seen you champion projects through the process. And that's all you got to do. So I joined about 6 years ago.
I'm getting some feedback. Nick, is that your, or is that you, Julie? Because as Julie's talking, all of a sudden I started hearing an echo.
I don't think it's.
No? Okay, keep going.
I'm going to mute myself I'll mute whenever.
Okay.
So anyway, so Nicole was like, come on. And I said, I can't sell. And she said, I have seen you, handhold projects, because I had a couple of her authors, Amanda Flower and Pamela Ewan, I think, and some others. I had some of Mary Sue's. And so when they stopped, when Lifeway stopped doing fiction and I became an agent, some of those authors came with me. And so I've known like Pam Ewan for 20 years because she was my author when I was her publisher, and now I'm her agent. And so I love it. And I've moved more into general market since then. And Nicole has kind of taken me under her wing to show me how all that's done. So getting out of the church pews and stretching my legs a little bit.
So speaking of general fiction, I know that your agency does a lot of different genres. I know you're particularly strong in romance and women's fiction, but I know there are others as well. And so generally, are there any genres you don't deal with, or are there ones that you consider that you specialize in, or just whatever is a good book is a good book?
Well, I think we've been fortunate for my predecessor, for Mary Sue, who said, find books you love and everything else will fall into place. There were never any constraints on what I could or couldn't represent. And that's saying something, because I did a lot of like super steamy while she was working the bonnets and the Amish and the very the very clean stuff. So I got to have a little bit more fun. I spiced up the agency a bit. But from a general perspective, we actually have a very broad range of fiction. We do a ton of young adult, we do thrillers, we do mysteries, cozy mysteries, historicals. We have a lot of nonfiction, which many people aren't necessarily aware of. And we have a slate of picture books from some outstanding authors that are all in production right now and due to come out 22, 23, 24. So our team has absolutely made a major push in that direction in the last few years, and we can't wait to see some of those come into the market. So range-wise, we do everything. Joyce even does poetry, and it's kind of hard to find agents who do poetry. No, I think it's just case dependent, and I would recommend that anybody who's querying any agent to just look at what their previous sales are, look at the authors that are featured on that agency's website, and get a sense of how your book fits into that mix. And the reason for that is twofold. One, you absolutely need a strong and passionate advocate for your book. And two, the contacts that that agent is going to have, those contacts tend to align with what they like to read, or what they're choosing to represent. So it's just prudent planning.
Good. So speaking of query letters, since you brought that up, and that was something I was going to ask, so what is it that you would recommend to an aspiring author that wants to submit a query letter? What is it that you would suggest they do to write an effective query letter? And how many query letters do you deal with at any given time do you have on your desk, just to give people an idea of what the competition is, if you will?
Me? So we probably get on average, I'd say between 10 and 20 queries a week, probably. And for me, it's kind of like speed dating. You're going through your inbox, and if I see something that's really interesting in the subject line, I'll stop and open it. I've got folks who say that they follow me on social media and that they really know, they've researched. For me, I'm a stickler on research. If I'm being pitched, erotica or horror, which are things I don't represent, it's an immediate no for me. And I'm thinking, oh, you wasted your shot. You should have done your research, to find somebody that would have been a closer match for you. So everything from the subject line to referencing, oh, I saw you posting about an author. Oh, I think you'll like this. Oh, I've done my research, so that it feels like they're steps ahead. It's not a cold query then, that they've actually done some research into finding me and, have an idea of kind of what I'm looking for. You can tell, believe it or not, the cold queries that come in where they're just mass emailing, you can tell because there's a tone, they're not personal, they're not referencing, something that I've posted or about my authors or anything like that. So those are a little bit tougher for me to kind of get into. Nick, what do you think?
We get a lot of queries, and it ranges from times of the year. Normally, like after NaNoWriMo, like post November, I mean, we could get a couple hundred queries in a week per agent. It can spike at different times. January is another big month. I think some people take the holidays to polish up and then to submit. It is very competitive. I will say that especially when we were starting out myself, I loved slush. I loved getting queries. It was like, I don't know, maybe my New Jersey upbringing, but it's like, ooh, there's a scratch off. What am I going to find? Like, what's going to be in my inbox? Like the gambler in me was like looking for, oh, we're going to win. So that part was incredibly exciting. And also, again, rewarding when you can find that talented author who wants to work with you. I mean, that's really something that we appreciate and feel very thankful for. The query process itself should contain the title, the word count of the book, the intended audience, If it's fiction, it should have back cover copy, so like 150 words or less, that captures the goal, the motivation, the conflict. If it's nonfiction, it should have a proposal that details the platform, the social media, comp books, a table of contents. There's kind of standard information that can be provided. And to speak to something that Julie mentioned about, you can tell when somebody is just blasting out queries. You can also tell when somebody's done their homework, when they've really put the time into crafting something that's really thoughtful, that captures the high concept hook of what this book is, how it fits into the marketplace, what makes it unique. I think of 𝐬𝐻𝐿, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐿, which had this outstanding hook of being aligned like in this Sherlock vein, but from an absolutely spectacular, diverse main character, and with a style and delivery that we hadn't seen before. So it was checking off all the boxes for me. And I think that's what we look for, is what is fresh and appealing, but also marketable. Because at the end of the day, like Julie said about having to convince the sales team about getting a laydown, it all does factor into how do we sell this particular book. And if I have a good sense of, hey, I know what to do with this, and this sounds good, then we're going to make the request, we're going to read, and we're going to try and work with someone.
Great. On social media, I see the complaint often from aspiring authors that they send query letters out and then never get a response. What should an author that sends a query letter expect? Should they only expect a response if it's a positive response? Should they not? I mean, I know it'll probably vary agency by agency, but what would your position be?
I think for us, our policy is to try to respond to every query. Now, I will say for me personally, I have a hierarchy, I guess. So my current authors come first, right? So tackling, their current manuscripts, taking them out on submission, they are my current client base, so they come first. And then when we get into the queries, it would be people who I've met or who have paid to talk to me at a conference. So we always tell them, when you're done, put it in the subject line that you met me or you talked to me, because they've taken that extra step, right, to do a face-to-face. And so I really try to tackle those first. And then sometimes, Rick, to be honest, I'll search. Like if I know that I am missing contemporary romance, I'll do a search in my email or a search on Query Manager looking for contemporary romance, and I'll tackle those next, because that's a hole I'm trying to fill. So we don't do it necessarily chronologically, but we do try to get to everybody. I know Lynette posts all the time, oh, if you submit it to me, I'm done. And I'm thinking, no, I never at that point. Good for you. But we do try to respond to everyone. Now, I will say that some, if it's just way off the mark, I'll say, hey, this isn't for me. Word count is too much, or it's not what I acquire. So they won't necessarily get thoughtful feedback. It'll, but we do try to respond to everyone.
So I have to ask you what just 1 second, what is Query Manager? You mentioned it, so for those who don't know, including me, what is Query Manager?
Yes, so it's Query Tracker is the author's side, and Query Manager is the agent side. And so we have accounts on there, and we list in there kind of what we want. We have you can go in and check the different subgenres that you're looking for and all of that, and then they can submit to you a query letter, a couple of pages, first 5 pages, things like that, and we can sort and slice and dice. Excuse me. So we can really kind of look for what we're looking for. I gotta get water. I'll be right back.
Go ahead, Nicole. I'm sorry I cut you off, but I wanted to know what that was.
No. I was just going to say I have an auto response for queries that come in, and these days, the bulk of authors that I work with are referrals from other authors. And I think that for anyone who's at the querying phase, they should do it in maybe batches of 10 so that you're not flooding something out everywhere that might not get the best results. And also have a variety of agents, because if you have an agent that you're targeting who has a very full client list, they're going to be a little less inclined perhaps, or have a little less bandwidth than you might be looking for starting out. Whereas if you're finding an agent who is, newer to the industry, they're still building their client list and are actively looking for content. And I think that was embarrassing. I'm sorry. But sorry. But that can be a better opportunity. And you want to have some mix of those agents on your roster as you're submitting to generate the best results possible. Query Manager, I think, is useful for a lot of agents and for authors who are on Query Tracker, because they can keep track of where everything is and have an idea of how responsive some people are. I've been closed to queries for some time, so it really is a matter of referral. I still get stuff and I'll still look if it's in there.
Right.
Every now and then I'm like, and
Right.
I might bring in one of our newer agents and say, I think you should read this. So if it's a great book and it has a good hook, I think that you'll be able to get attention. After that, it's just the book has to stand on its own. We've gotten pitches, particularly live pitches, as opposed to like queries, that have been awful. Some of my best authors cannot talk about their books to save their lives. Like it goes downhill fast. And part of our, approach as an agency is like, let us read, because you don't necessarily have to be able to talk about a good book. You just have to write a good book. And we have found some absolutely talented and wonderful projects that maybe could have been overlooked, if we hadn't given them a chance. So good things. The last thing I'll say is that agents work for authors. So you really are in a position of power in the sense that you have the product that we need to sell. So the relationship is one that's very balanced, or certainly in the author's favor. So there's always going to be opportunity, and that's a really exciting thing.
Oh, cool. You had mentioned conferences earlier, Julie, and in one of the other chapter and verse sessions that I did with some authors, one of their tips to aspiring authors was to find conferences in the genre you're writing in and go to them, because you can rub shoulders, you can get discovered, potentially meet. So, I mean, would you agree with that? And if so, are there any that are your particular favorites where you'd go, well, these are ones you should think about?
Absolutely. I think conferences, if you're a doctor, right, you're going to go to your little trade shows or your conferences, throughout the year. It's professional development. It's learning your craft, right? Because you're learning things from people who have been there in the trenches. You have an opportunity to pitch to publishing professionals, either agents or editors or both. It's networking. So you get out of that, black cave that you're in with your keyboard writing, and you're actually meeting other authors so that you can compare notes, time management, the querying process, just, sharing experiences. I think conferences are huge for authors. And I think I have not seen one really that hasn't been worth it for an author to go to. And I've signed authors from conferences before. The writers workshop that I mentioned, Chuck Sambucino puts those on. They're regional. And I've actually signed authors on the spot, and nonfiction mostly, because I don't necessarily need to read, it's more about the concept and about how unique it is for nonfiction. I felt like we could work through the writing stuff later. And I've sold them. The ones that I acquired, I sold. So, fiction ones are a little bit harder because you really do have to read the manuscript on that. but still just getting face to face with authors is a huge opportunity. And I love it. I feel like, you're going to be a team for the foreseeable future, right? And so it's nice to always have an opportunity to meet folks face to face before you launch on that journey.
Cool. I agree. So
I
go ahead.
I would add a little bit that there's a sense of community that you find when you attend a writer's conference, and writing in and of itself is such a solitary endeavor. I mean, you're on your own, you've got the voices in your head, and you've got,
it's not a team sport.
Board, in front of you, or if you're writing it out by hand, it's definitely gratifying, and I think also very conducive toward the spread of good information, whether it's how to promote your book, how to help get endorsements, how to connect with beta readers, how to find support and just general guidance for craft or balancing lifestyle with writing. There's so much information that comes out of a lot of these writers' conferences, and these organizations are also, they are the portals to help protect authors and to inform them. So if you're looking at like a Thriller Writers of America or a Mystery Writers of America, SCBWI, for example, is another one. There are great instances where we have very structured organizations with writers groups that are national or international, and you can really obtain the support and the resources that you need.
Cool. By the way, I want to go back to something you said earlier, and that is you're opening an office in France, Paris, I believe, right? I volunteer to work there.
Yes, yes. We're gonna have to move one of those characters into Paris, and it's a research trip. Rick, let's do this.
Field trip.
Yes. Anyway, going back to the what should a new author that signs with you expect you to do? In other words, I look on social media. I constantly see aspiring authors talking about they'd rather self-publish than go through the hassle of getting an agent or, of working with a publisher. And I think there's somewhat of a misunderstanding of the scope of what agents actually do, because it's more than just put a deal together. Certainly in your agency's case, that's true. And I'm just wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what is the scope of services that you would do for an author that's signed with you?
Me again? I will quote Nicole that we are career consultants, right? We are not a one and done kind of shop. We acquire authors that are prolific and help strategize their career trajectory and growth for this year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. Not every book sells. And so we are very in tune with authors in being able to pivot, brainstorm. Some of my best times, the best parts of this job that I love is getting on a phone and brainstorming, how to kill off somebody, or, titles, looking at covers. It really, so it's a holistic approach for the author, but then it's a holistic approach for the book itself, to everything from editing to packaging to marketing to, promotion, and then planning to do it all over again for the next book. And I think with you, Rick, you've experienced a little bit of that, website, social media. Anybody who follows me, that's all I talk about are my cats and my books. So I don't know that every agency does that. We do graphics for folks. We really are kind of all in, all hands, all the time. Nick, what do you think?
You also do foreign rights. You also do film and TV. I mean,
and that's Nick's area. Absolutely.
So one of the big ways that we've kind of attempted to diversify in the last few years has been to really put a heavy focus on subrights. So that is foreign, that's TV film. We've optioned a bunch of projects that we're incredibly excited about. Audio rights, Rick, which is one of the ways we originally came into each other's orbit. TV film, the gaming, we've done comic books, we've done serialized, we work with apps. The idea is to understand that we are in a global economy, and then to also look at every possible way of taking an individual IP and bringing it into the world. And certainly the way that people imbibe their entertainment may change. I don't mind if you're reading on your phone. I don't mind if you're listening in your AirPods. I don't mind if you got a graphic novel in your hands, or if you just want to binge on Netflix. But we want to find ways to make sure that that author's vision and that particular novel or IP can actually find the broadest audience that it can.
I can certainly speak from my personal experience with both of you and your staff that my book wouldn't be as good as it is without your involvement on so many levels. So, I am living testament to what you're talking about.
I appreciate you saying that. It has been, I love it. I mean, I think you have to love it, every part of it, the editing, the marketing, the promotion, the author relations. We do a cruise. We've done a cruise, I think 4 of them. We had to kind of cancel our last one because of COVID. But getting authors together to network and grow and learn, and we brought speakers and editors and created our own conference environment for our authors as just kind of a way to expand their knowledge and provide a service, to them. And again, I don't know that a lot of agencies do that, but we feel like it's important to be with an author every step of the way as they grow, to strategize, just kind of all of it, A to Z. And I think each one of us loves all of it, A to Z.
So I know that your agency deals with a lot of romance authors. And I know that romance is one of the leading self-published categories out there. So I was just wondering if you could speak a little about to authors about the difference between or benefit and detriments of self-publishing versus going through a publisher from your standpoint.
Sure. I think it absolutely boils down to what an author's goals are. And I don't think that it has to be A or B. I think you can absolutely do both. But for our authors, it starts with a conversation. And if you're looking to maximize your earnings, if you're looking to connect or to release content that is better suited to a digital marketplace, if you want to be able to write shorter books and put them up more quickly, if you want to have complete autonomy over the cover, the pricing, the story direction, there's a lot of reasons why authors move into indie publishing and have done so to great success. So we absolutely feel that that's a piece of the puzzle, or of the pie. For authors that are considering traditional publishing, there are other advantages that come with that. You have an advance, you have a committed publicity and marketing team, you have distribution, books that will be on shelves, in libraries, in bookstores, that visibility factor that comes from having books in print. This ability to tap a different demographic of reader than what only the indie outlets can enable. So when we start to look at really what the goals are, we can align a strategy that is going to achieve them. So maybe a very prolific romance author, because you mentioned romance, for example, will do a series that is going to be indie released, and then they'll have a crossover women's fiction that we will do in trade paperback with a traditional publisher. It really depends on timing and also strategy. So these are conversations that evolve out of career planning, and then also what the author's capabilities are, because you have to maximize your earnings for every minute that you are in that chair writing. And maybe a traditional book doesn't make as much money, but the visibility that you've achieved and the market and brand awareness that you've achieved is what gives those indie books that big old boost that it got. So yeah, it's wonderful because there are more options now than there ever were before. And I think that every author has an opportunity to really find their own readership, in whether it's in a serial, an app, audiobooks, you know, just on the indie side, or certainly in bookstores and on the shelves.
I would add to that the area that Nick is so prevalent in, which is subrights. And that's kind of the difference. A self-pub author does not really have the connections or the bandwidth to be able to sell foreign rights or an audiobook version or film and TV. And so that's one of the other benefits, I think, in going the traditional route with an agent and with, you know, traditional publisher, is that even if the publisher doesn't hold those rights or exploit those rights, the agency can help do that. So, you know, there's bigger, I guess, opportunities, you know, for the book when you're looking at film, TV, dramatic, foreign, and audio that you wouldn't get as a self-pub author.
Yeah, at Blackstone, we do, I'm sorry, Nicole.
I was literally going to say, you know, Blackstone does a great job with their subrights. So you beat me to that. But I will turn over the Blackstone talk to you, Rick. You know it better than anyone.
No, actually, I was going in a slightly different direction, but thank you. No, what I was going to say is one of the things we found at Blackstone is that we have had a number of authors who were very successful self-publishing come to us and want to leave self-publishing, only not because they weren't making a ton of money, they were, but because they weren't getting the spread across libraries, bookstores that you get with a publisher.
Absolutely. It's the distribution. Yeah. You just, yeah, in print. And I just saw, we were talking about kind of some industry trends. And I think ebook is still hovering at like 30 to 35% of the marketplace. The rest are print books. And so if you're going the digital only route, there's a lot of opportunity there, but you're missing obviously the other 70 to 75%. There's POD, which is great, but that's not selling in, you know, table space, bookshelf space,
right?
In libraries and in bookstores, brick and mortar stores.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. What do you think about pen names? When are they useful and when are they counterproductive?
I mean, I think it really depends on the circumstances. We have authors that write in more than one genre. So oftentimes they will take a pen name for one of the genres so that the brand is clearly defined for their readers. If you're trying to go from sci-fi to historical, for example, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of crossover, and trying to bridge those readers would be challenging. So I do think it's very effective in that sense. But I also think that there is a sense, especially in today's age, of authenticity, where readers want to feel like they know who an author is, both through engaging them on social media and then in the name that's on a book. So I think that the preference is always for the author's true name. But we work with an author to develop, again, a strategy that they are comfortable with and that is going to allow them to get into the marketplace in a way that is effective.
I have a couple of authors who chose pen names to keep their personal life and their and their author life separate. One is a retired FBI agent, you know, and a lot of her stories are probably pulling from old cases that she's worked. And so she wants to kind of keep that, you know, that delineation in place. But I've also had editors come and say, you know, oh, I Googled your name and, you know, there's a porn star that's named whatever. We need to change your name for your book, for your Amish novel. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. So it can kind of go both ways.
the takeaway there is always Google the pen name you're
Yes.
thinking of. There is a lot more porn names out there than you would,
Yes.
and serial killers and other, you
Yes.
know, there's a lot to be wary of with a name selection.
Just as a
Absolutely.
pure coincidence, the photo editor of Penthouse magazine, his name is Richard Bleiweiss.
Oh.
I used to get calls from his models, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And no relation either, which is strange. But
yeah, because that's a different name. Yep.
So the next question I'm going to ask you, it's like, I don't know the answer to this because I know what Blackstone does since I work there. And I know that one of the things that I like about Blackstone, just looking at it from the outside or the inside, is that Blackstone markets every book that they sign. You know, they're not a publisher that says, let's sign 20 more books than we can possibly work and see what sticks. We'll throw them against the wall. But I hear complaints regularly on social media from aspiring authors talking about how that even when you sign with a regular publisher, you still have to do the bulk of the marketing. And I'll preface it by saying, in today's day and age, if an author doesn't do marketing, no matter how they're being published, they're behind the 8 ball to all the authors who are and are taking advantage of social media. But I guess my question is, there's got to be differences between publishers. And I'm not looking for you to name publishers, but what should an author expect from a publisher in the way of marketing? Do most publishers market their authors' books? Do some do it better than others? Again, I don't want you to name names and point at fingers, but what's the range of what an author should expect and look out for?
Well, that feels like a loaded question, but I actually feel like we could tackle it. I think to just be fair, there is a very extensive range, and some of that correlates with the advance that's paid for a book
Okay.
that sells at a very high market value, you know, in terms of advances. That publisher is going to want to recoup the money that they put out, that their you know, wagering is going to be successful. And to make a book break out today, it does absolutely take money. And there's a difference between marketing and publicity. Publicity, for the most part, is free. That's your social media that's getting reads, you know, encouraging people to do reviews. Marketing is ad dollars. It's co-op placement. It's the behind the scenes push that a publisher gives to a book to ensure that it's going to have a chance in the marketplace. So we try to have those conversations prior to the sale being concluded, you know, and to either get a marketing program overview or a marketing budget, or to understand, having worked with these publishers before, to know, okay, this book is going to get this style of marketing. And to be comfortable with that, so that the author is informed and in line with realistic expectations. I mean, the days of publishers sending authors on multiple city book tours, I mean, COVID pretty much killed that, if there was very much of it left. I mean, I hope we get back to that someday, but it's not to say that that's the most effective use of several $1,000s that could have maybe gone into Amazon ads or Facebook ads or TikTok or wherever your particular brand of readers are going to be. Because that's really the crux of it, is you have to present your book to where your audience is. And YA readers are in different places than cozy mystery readers, and understanding, having a strong marketing team that knows who the audience is and how to connect and engage that audience. That's the real secret to the success of a book.
I think, you know, I've been in publishing now, you know, 20 some years. When I was a fiction publisher, we were told that it cost about $80,000 to get a book to market. And that includes building, parking, lights, health insurance,
Right.
salaries, all of that. And so I think that the publisher, that's a lot of money, right? And I think the publisher, to Nicole's point, is wanting to recoup their investment, right? The money that they've invested, the time that they've invested, and the way they do that best is on the front end, the sell-in part, right? The co-op dollars with the bookstores, buying ads with the distributors, getting table placement at Valentine's Day for your romance book, things, reviews, advanced reviews and endorsements, things like that, and getting a good sell-in. And then I think the onus has kind of fallen on the author for the sell-through, which is once the book hits the marketplace, I think publishers in general look to authors to do that grassroots marketing, the street teams, the giveaways, the posts, the live, the Facebook Live, the opening the box to show their books, all of those kinds of things, because there's a visceral part of it. I think everybody wants to write a novel and or be a published author. And I think, sharing that experience has kind of a, bandwagon approach. So I think publishers, that's my opinion. I think publishers are focused on the sell-in, the front end, and that they're kind of looking at authors to do a lot on the sell-through. And with my authors, I really work with them on the marketing because it's that sell-through. I want us to earn out. I want to have royalties coming in, because then when we go to the publisher with the next idea, they're in the positive, right? They're in the black. And so the publisher has made a good investment with that author, and they've earned out. So that's, I kind of take it like that businessy type of approach. But yeah, gone are the days where authors could just write and not have to worry about marketing. Unfortunately, they really are asked to do, a fair portion, if not the lion's share, of the grassroots marketing.
I think, though, to build on what Julie said, Rick, the competition in the marketplace is immense. I mean, there are millions, literally millions of books that are released into the marketplace every single year. So you're competing against frontlist books, you're competing against backlist books, with so many authors out in the same space, clamoring for attention and for people to read their books. So I can understand how it can feel frustrating oftentimes to an author, or that nobody is doing anything, when in reality that likely is not the case. All publishers are not created equal. I mean, I will not say that. We absolutely have fan favorites for who we know is going to work their tail off to promote and help uplift a book. But we also have to acknowledge that every publisher wants to be profitable. They want to keep those doors open. They want to keep their salaries, and their employees employed. So nobody is going out with the mindset of, oh, I'm not going to publicize this book, I'm not going to market this book, because that would be, it would defeat the purpose of them having acquired it in the first place. So I just think awareness, having really good communication, and knowing upfront what your expectations should be, that's what empowers an author to make the best decisions. It's not always the flashy advance. It's actually who's going to get behind this book, roll up their sleeves, and get it out into the world in a way that's going to result in the sales that you really want. Those are the things. And I think having that shift in perspective for an author is important, or at least knowing enough to ask the right questions so that you don't end up disappointed with what that marketing strategy might be.
Right. Well, I think you both answered the question really, really well. Even though you thought it was loaded, I thought you did a great job of unloading it. So.
Well, and I will say too that I'm seeing, I think when publishers do imprints, because you've got readers who will read every Harlequin book, in whatever line that puts out, right? So I think there is some value in publishers doing those imprints, so that you get kind of that bandwagon approach, and they can market the brand instead of the individual authors. And we're seeing some more of that coming out in the marketplace right now.
Well, that's interesting, because certainly you're right with Harlequin. I'm assuming Tor, and some other very focused. It's true, I think, with the general publisher, whether it Random House or whatever, it's like people aren't brand loyal to that. They're loyal to the book and the author more than anything. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense about the imprint. So we're kind of running low on time right now, and I was wondering if each of you would like to, either or both, say what a closing tip might be to aspiring authors, or anything you'd like to say about the agency or anything that I haven't asked.
Okay, I will jump in on this. I will jump in and say, be like Rick. That's my advice. Write, keep writing, be out there looking to connect, looking to pay it forward, as Rick is doing here, and stay focused. This is a dream. To be an author, absolutely everyone and anyone can accomplish this if you are dedicated and hardworking. It is a craft that you hone. It is a skill set that you just have to put the time and the hard work into, and you can achieve your dream. And listening to a podcast like this, or attending a seminar, or just doing the due diligence to inform yourself and empower yourself to achieve that goal, that's what it's all about. So keep writing, you will succeed.
Julie, do you have something?
Yeah, can I do two?
Sure, go for it.
So I would say BIC, butt in chair. That's kind of Nicole's playing off of what she said. You got to finish it, right? You have to finish the book before we can sell it. I have folks that come to me in conferences, they say, oh, I have an idea. And that is fantastic. And let's talk about it and let's flesh it out. But you got to finish it. You got to finish that book. And I'm in NaNoWriMo right now, and I'm hating every minute of it because it's so hard to write. I don't know how you guys do this, and a full-time job and children and, eat and sleep. But you got to get it done. You got to get it done. You got to get the book finished. And then my second bit would be research. You can't write in a vacuum, right? You have to know that there are acceptable word counts within certain genres, right? You have to know, you have to read YA to write what you can't just write just to write. You need to do your research and kind of figure it out. A lot, we get some, 10,000 word novels or 300,000 words, and if you went to a bookstore, there's not a lot of those. So you have to do that research to make sure that what you're writing can be sold and has some commercial kind of value to it.
Can I do one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, because you got me thinking, Julie. Okay, so all of that said, if you want to be part of publishing as an industry, buy books. Books should be the birthday gifts, the bar mitzvahs, the Christmas, you name the holiday, you should be giving and gifting books. And particularly Rick Bleiweiss's 𝐵𝐴𝐿. I am going to shamelessly promote this book, my friend, because it is so damn good, and I can't wait for it to go live.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if you've enjoyed this, but I have immensely. It's always wonderful talking with both of you, no matter what the circumstances.
Awesome.
I've had a ball and could go for another hour. Easy peasy.
You know what? I could easily too, but I think we'd wear out the watchers and the listeners.
Probably.
And for those watchers and listeners who are out there, I hope you've enjoyed this. And if you had, I'd love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And thank you both. You're marvelous human beings and fabulous agents. So,
thank you, Rick. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you.